This is a little too low.
From Microbe TV, this is Q&A with A&V. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and joining me tonight from New York, Amy Rosenfeld. Hey, Amy.
Hey, Vincent, how are you today?
I have to tell everyone, we've just been going crazy for the last 15 minutes. I couldn't hear Amy. I changed cables, I rebooted, and it turned out that I didn't have my headphones plugged in. Oh my God. I feel like such an idiot.
Well, it's fine.
But Amy knew that when she couldn't hear me. She said, "It's on your end, isn't it?"
I did, but I even text you. If you check your text, I ask you if your headphones are plugged in.
Ay, ay, ay. Let me check. Oh, your earbuds plugged in. I hear you. Okay.
See?
Boy, oh boy.
I knew what the problem was.
Okay, so they were going to predict a red sweater for you, but you don't have a red sweater tonight.
No sweater today.
Purple. It's not a new
Purple.
microphone. It's the same one that she's been using for a while, right, Amy?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start out. Last time there was a lot of confusion about our position on testing. So Amy responded actually this week to someone's email with a very detailed response, which I'm going to have her post on Virology blog hopefully tomorrow. But I just wanted her to summarize.
I'm editing it now.
Okay, I wanted you to summarize for the participants in this live stream. What is your position on testing for COVID?
So my position for testing on COVID is very simple. All right, wait a minute. Oh, I moved it. Hold a second.
You're trying to read your document, right?
Well, I have to, I moved it because I'm editing it's not completely, grammatically correct and stuff. So I'm just editing it. So my position is very simple. And it's based on the precedents we set for other pathogens, or viral pathogens, that vaccines exist. We don't test people after vaccinating them for measles, mumps, polio, hepatitis, and influenza. And all of these vaccines were basically to prevent severe disease. And they still allow for infection. And they work kind of like suntan lotion. So you can put on a lot of suntan lotion, but the minute you go out, and clothing, but the minute you go out in the sun, even on a cloudy day, you're still exposed to the sun. So that's not preventing any sun exposure, right? And then you sometimes get a burn, even if you lather on, 146, whatever the highest suntan screen is. But your burn is much less severe than if you didn't have any suntan lotion. But you don't throw out the tube of suntan lotion and say suntan lotion doesn't ever work and say, okay, well, forget it. No, you accept that. And so that's how vaccines work, is that you don't prevent exposure, and there are going to be not frequent, but there are going to be cases of mild disease. You're going to get a less severe burn than if you didn't have any suntan lotion. And so when we gave the polio vaccine, when we gave the flu vaccine, there are always people who don't get vaccinated, and there are always people who are immune compromised. And immune compromised people who get exposed to polio, or even the polio vaccine, they shed for like 28 years later, right?
Sometimes. Mostly it's about 30 to 60 days, yeah.
Yeah, but like Adam Loring has a paper about the 28
you're talking
years.
about immune compromise. Yes.
Yeah, right? And so if you are concerned about them and you feel ill, then you should use your brain and logically not go and visit them. And there are people who were unvaccinated and they took a risk, and those people are taking the same risk as they do now. And we didn't stop society, and we didn't start testing everybody for it. And so I don't see why this, as we become more and more vaccinated, why this is a problem, why we started testing people who are vaccinated. science that you and I are interested in is not a public health policy. It's we're investigating how things work to understand how to make them better. We're not going to advise people, you know, what the public health should do. That's a totally separate question. So that's what I
So,
said.
so you're not in favor of the mass testing of vaccinated people.
No.
Now, I mean, there was one exception that I ran by you, so let me do it because someone will bring it up. So let's say you were working and you're fully vaccinated, 3 doses, and you're going home every day to perhaps parents who are quite elderly, maybe with other diseases, or maybe kids under 5 who haven't been vaccinated. So do you think if you have symptoms, you should test to see if you're posing a risk for them?
Maybe for kids under 5, but my parents are, I go home and see my mother and her husband, and one is 93 and has dementia and has been in and out of the hospitals. And she has lymphoma, which we've talked about a lot of times, right? And I, they actually both got exposed through, we're not sure, but we probably can guess through one of his hospital stays in the last couple of weeks. And while they're, you know, my mom has lymphoma and she's actively getting treated, they both developed, as she would say, no, they never felt sick. Or then she follows it up with, well, you don't really know if you feel sick at this age anyway. So how do you tell? But kids under 5 are a separate issue. I can understand that. But for this, you know, my family, and they were triple vaxxed, and, you know, they were very lucky they didn't get any disease whatsoever. And I think that's the way the majority of people go.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is if you test and you're positive, then you have to do, isolation, quarantine as recommended by CDC, or at least suggested. They have no authority to tell you what to do.
Right.
So don't test.
Right. And you will attest that so every day she called and we discussed, and her sister, who I alluded to the last time as the missing person in my graduate class, I
Mhm.
was not clear where she was when I was doing lab work as a graduate student, but she got a PhD in virology somehow. Um, she insisted that my mom test and like call the oncologist, and she ended up missing yesterday's infusion appointment because she continued to test and she tested positive before the last day that they would allow her to decide whether or not she or yeah, the last day that she had to absolutely have a negative test before she could go. And the oncologist said to her too, stop testing.
Yeah, it's not really useful any longer. It is
Right.
now outside the clinical setting. If you go to a hospital because you have symptoms, they will test you. But if you're home and you have mild symptoms or none, don't test. I
Right.
don't think
And
there's a point to that. And I think Daniel agreed last week. He said we're testing too much.
right. And what was more upsetting was the fact that he's 93 and he still has fluid from in his lungs. He has lung function compromising because he had pneumonia like 5 or 6 years ago. And if he got sick, he was not qualified for monoclonals, but she was because she's getting active treatment.
So many people have stories now of at-home antigen tests. 7 days plus they're positive. What does it mean? And I say to them, stop testing. It doesn't mean anything. You feel fine. You don't have trouble breathing. Stop it. And I hear that all the time. Today there was a recall of Ellume tests because they give false positives. And I know someone who has been using Ellume tests.
Well, we couldn't find any, and those are the tests that you offered
Yes.
to lend to my family.
So
And
at a
then
time when we didn't have vaccines, testing was a way to go about your life. Now we have vaccines. If people choose not to take them, that's their decision, and they're the ones that are going to be in the hospital. Everyone else mostly has mild disease. I know everyone now I know is COVID positive except Amy because she doesn't test. and myself, because I don't test either.
Uh,
All right. That's our
yeah, I
position.
don't test, and as I said, you don't test. So then somebody wrote to me and said that I was being unethical because it's a middle of a pandemic. And he said he perfectly felt comfortable going to class when he had rhinovirus symptoms because if you got exposed to rhinovirus, well, you don't get sick and
Hmm.
stuff.
Sounds
And
familiar.
it does sound familiar. And I had to take a step back and redefine what a pandemic is. It's not about the number of deaths, it's about the number of cases of some infectious agent, right? And I'm not sure that somebody that we know who does research on rhinoviruses would say that rhinoviruses are so benign because her lab is interested and has collaborators in the pharmaceutical industry to develop vaccines against her specific rhinovirus because it makes asthma and chronic pulmonary obstruction disease so much more severe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, when you look at the economics of it, those viruses are more economically damaging to any economy and country than this is because so this looks bad because you kill people, but the other, everybody's home sick, staying home and everything, and you damage the economy even more.
And just to make it clear, folks, many of you have been here before, many of you not. Amy and I are virologists. We work on viruses. We try to understand how they work. We work in the laboratory. We do experiments. And
Well, not for much longer.
and we are here to try and help you understand the virus and to help you try and interpret what is you're being told, mainly through the press, and to clarify matters. We think we can do that for you. All right. So first of all, thank you, Calix Yukon, for your contribution. I usually record at the Incubator, which is a studio in New York City that Daniel Griffin and I lease, and we appreciate your support. Here's a good question. Will it be safe enough for a person with an N95 that's not fit tested but is twice vaccinated to interact with a baby?
Yeah.
See, I think there's very little transmission from vaccinated people. And don't start citing studies that have shown this and that. I don't want to know about that because they're full of uncertainty. No one has measured infectious virus shedding from vaccinated versus unvaccinated people, and nor do we know the amount of virus you need to transmit. So
Or initiate an infection.
And in Amy and my view, that's what you need to prove that a vaccinated person is transmitting. And all the epidemiologists will be up in arms and say, oh, you ignore that we can do this and that. And well, no, it's not a precise science. I'm sorry. So that's where I think you could do that. Just be careful. Yes, wear your mask. Wash your hands.
Yeah. If you have symptoms, you can't, I'm not going to say that everybody, you're stupid. People do what they want, but you can do it reasonably and you don't have to be afraid.
Peter says, Amy and Vincent, I continue to argue with people I know that the current variant surges are primarily behavior-driven and the expected seasonal surge very frustrating. Yes, you will be frustrated. Even people here on this live stream, so it can't possibly be human behavior-driven. Well, why do you think it's different in different states, for example? And the problem is, Peter, that the WHO spews that this is X times more transmissible, and that's not correct. Omicron is more fit, but we don't know anything about transmission. And I was just looking for this preprint out of Norway where they conclude the increased fitness of Omicron is due to antigenic evasion, not improved transmission. So just cite them that paper if you would like to do that. But we get the same thing every time. And it'll be years before people back off from this nonsense that's been propagated, unfortunately.
Well, it's like the time I said we should just stop counting cases and only look at hospitalizations. And now I think that was like 18 months ago, and now all of a sudden Tony Fauci is saying it.
So Omar says, I heard Omicron is spreading as fast as measles. And Amy, did you send me that text last week, I think it was, where some infectious disease doc said it was almost as transmissible as measles. The R
Yeah.
naught was approaching measles, which I think we discussed last week. It's just, you can't even calculate an R naught at this point. With
Well,
some
as I said, the R naught of my virus is 36 in the daycare
in
center
daycare
in
centers, right?
Taiwan.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's
the R naught can
36
be
in
influenced.
daycare. Yeah,
It's not a,
36 in daycare centers in Taiwan because 3-year-olds don't like Kleenex. It's
with
not
so
cool.
many vaxxed people getting infected, would a nasal spray vaccine be more effective to prevent infections? I don't know. So the one of the best vaccines at preventing infections is the human papillomavirus vaccine, which is administered intramuscularly, yet gives high antibody levels in the cervical mucosa, and it prevents infection. And so you don't have to spray the vaccine in there, you just give it intramuscularly. That's why I say not necessarily. What do you think, Amy?
Uh, Prevent infection? I don't know that you can ever prevent infection. I think it's very hard. I think we got lucky with HPV. Um, I think that intranasal vaccine might elicit an IgA response rate, which may be more aggressive in leading to the aborted infections.
Will a nasal swab result in a negative test for someone double vaxxed and boosted and never infected, or is a throat swab a better way to detect?
Nasal swab is fine.
I think the nasal swab has been shown to be absolutely fine compared. Remember, we used to do the ones where they put this.
Yeah,
What do you
the
call
nasal
that?
pharyngeal cavity,
Yeah,
all
now
the
you
way
do
up
an
to your
anterior.
brain.
Yes.
Yeah,
So these have been shown to be fine. Remember, for a while, Amy's saliva was being looked at, but that didn't turn
it
out to
didn't
be
take
useful.
off.
No, it didn't take off. No. Is it possible for the innate immune system to knock out a SARS-2 infection before the adaptive system has a chance to generate antibodies or memory cells?
Yeah, that's what Chumakov is all about. That's why he thought you should give OPV and people got MMR, was that you had high interferon and that protected you for a short period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. So the innate immune system is terrific. And most infections, I think, are cleared. I just had to raise my chair to match Amy's height there.
Well, that's good because my chair can't go down anymore after well, after you told me it was too high and I pulled some
No,
lever
it's good.
and it went
We'll have to work on that.
whatever.
I think many infections are stopped by the innate immune system before you know it, and they don't even get to the adaptive phase. Yes. Yes. Joshua, thank you for your oh, Joshua has the beard, which we remarked the last few episodes.
Yeah, but
Frankfurt Hall and Philly.
he went by a different name the other time. Last week he was like American Saw Master or something.
Well, maybe he changed it so we'd know who he is.
Excellent. Thank you.
I will buy. He was going to buy us a beer if we're ever in Philly. Would
You'll go to
love it.
Philly.
Would love it. I've been to Philly a number of times for various reasons. I like Philadelphia, and Alan Dove likes it very much. He worked there. But anyway, thank you, Joshua, for your support of the incubator. I really appreciate it. And John, also, thank you for your support. If we updated the vaccines, any reason we couldn't get them up near original efficacy? Do you want to take that? No. So, Amy, the idea would be you make an Omicron-specific vaccine. Wouldn't you get 90% efficacy against infection?
No.
You would for 6 months.
No, you would get no. I don't think that you would ever I don't think you would ever get 90%. I mean, I don't know if you gave a boost and you went now after 3 weeks, you'd be at 90% protected against the infection. That's what Israel just came out and said. I sent you that, or 7 days they did. So I sent you that article, you and Daniel, that article. But it wanes. It's going to contract. So who cares? Why do I need to make an updated vaccine? Because anytime I have a ton of antibodies against anything, I'm going to block infection for a very short period of time. Because you can have you can have a low amount of high affinity, or you can have a high amount of low affinity, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then results in high avidity, if I remember correctly. So, but at the end of the day, it does the same. It does the same thing.
Environmental wants to know, my elderly father has long haul COVID, had a pacemaker put in, 3 times a week dialysis in the hospital. Possible these things would have happened without COVID. It's impossible to know, right?
I have no idea.
I don't think anyone could say. I mean, the thing is, that if they happened at the time he had COVID, then people would blame it. But that's an association, right? It's not causation. So no, there's no way of knowing. I heard Omicron may not be a variant of COVID, but rather came from mice. Well, there is an idea that it possibly did. It's very hard to prove, but the mice got it from us. So it is SARS-CoV-2. It's just a variant of it, either way. Would you agree, Amy?
Yeah. I don't know how, was that Christian Anderson or Michael Warbley who came up with that hypothesis
Yeah,
that it's a
Christian
spillback
originally
event?
thought, and there's some phylogenetic analyses which have been preprinted that suggest that the lineage looks like a murine lineage of SARS-CoV-2. So, but I think it's very, and we talked about it on TWiV actually, and Nels
Yeah,
agreed
but how
that
are you ever going to prove it? You don't
you
have all the
can't.
sequences from
No,
humans, right?
there's
So
too much. There's undersampling in mice, right? So that's a big problem.
there's undersampling in humans too, even though we're sequencing too much.
Can you remember your first plaque assay, and was it for anything significant?
I can remember my first plaque assay for sure.
What was that?
My first plaque assay was done looking at the difference between polio and Rigi and HUH7.5 and HUH7 cells after I defended, and you were on vacation for 6 weeks. You went to Canada to visit Doris's family.
My first plaque assay was so long ago. It would have been in late
Oh, please, you did it
70s.
with Palese.
Yeah, I did flu plaque assays before I did polio. Actually, that's where I learned plaque assays from Peter. And my first one, I was just learning. But I brought it to David Baltimore's lab where they'd never done plaque assays with polio virus. They just grew it up. And so I introduced plaque assays there because we needed it. And so then
How
I
did
brought it to
David
my lab.
quantitate anything then?
You can quantitate, you know?
Oh.
You look at the lack of quantitation today with SARS-CoV-2, it's nothing new. It's nothing new.
Nope.
Anything new with spread of Omicron? Does it linger in the air? Does it still? I haven't seen anything that suggests that the physical nature of transmission by the variant is any different from any of the others. But people, quote anecdotal stories that say it goes under doors and so forth. But this is real nonsense.
Goes under doors? What is it? Like a mysterious gas that you see in the horror movies, where
No,
they
it's not
close the
mysterious
door and you see
gas.
the green gas flowing in and, or the
But I
green
think
goo.
the
Do you know what I'm
6 foot,
talking about?
yeah, the 6 foot masks, none of these things, none of these non-pharmaceutical interventions are negated by Omicron. Not at all. Since Omicron's many changes developed incrementally, mutations, can markers be gained from serum collected from blood banks over a period of time that might help predict pathways of future?
No.
So if you're COVID positive, you don't give blood, right? So I'm not sure that would be useful, right, Amy?
I'm not sure it would be useful, and I'm not sure you could predict because there's different forces of selection, right?
Yeah, Omicron is on a separate branch of its own on the SARS-CoV-2 tree, and as Nell says, it's very poorly sampled, so it's not clear at all where it arose, or how, or it didn't suddenly have all these spike changes. They had to acquire them incrementally, and we didn't see any of that. Yeah. All right, so now we're back to behavior versus virus, and now I don't say it's only behavior driven. I think human behavior is the main reason why we're having these spikes right now. Yeah, December 2021. It's a holiday season in many parts of the world, and people are going back to their lives as they haven't in a long time. Don't forget, many people are vaccinated. They feel they can go do things. And theaters are opening, restaurants are opening. That can explain a great deal. Don't assume it has anything to do with the virus unless you prove it. Okay. And I think Amy agrees with that. We talk all the time about this. If she said to me, if Amy said, yes, we did write an op-ed in the New York Times months ago. If Amy said one morning, Vincent, here are data that show something has changed, I would take it and I'd look at it and say, yeah, you're right, but she hasn't done that.
And no, I complain about other things all the time, the lack of time zeros and various things that make conclusions.
There's a big problem with pandemic science. It not only gets done quickly, it is poorly reviewed, and the journals want to pump it out as fast as they can because they're conflicted as hell. They want to make money by publishing these papers. Oh, and they will tell you they want to provide a service to humanity. Yeah, but still stuffing their coffers with money at the same time. And yes, I'm a little bit cynical.
Well, the thing is that just today I heard David Angus say that the virus loves neurons and is neurotropic or neurovirulent. I forgot what he said, which word he used. And this is a problem that he miscommunicated. He communicated something that is completely wrong. And people are going to follow it. And it's going to take years to correct. And it could be inhibitory in many different ways. It could be inhibitory in understanding the pathogenesis. It could be inhibitory in developing antivirals. It could be inhibitory in doing proper diagnoses of patients. I mean, it's irresponsible on so many levels. It's just unbelievable. And, but it's sexy. And people are unable to, they have this mindset and they just can't get away from it. And we find it when we write grants and stuff, people come back and they say to us, oh, but this is what the dogma is. Well, sometimes the dogma is wrong.
Amy likes to point out the story of Simon Flexner, who worked on polio in the early 1900s, and he contaminated the field, completely delayed the development of vaccine because he thought polio virus entered the nose and then went into the brain.
But it wasn't just that. He thought that there was only one serotype of polio.
That's right. He insisted there was just one. And so he had such a position of power that he influenced a lot of people. And the moral is, science is not about one scientist or some science. It's about the whole field sorting out something. And even that takes a long time. As Amy said, once it's contaminated by someone powerful. We didn't have a vaccine for polio until 1955. And Flexner was working on it in the 1930s. All right. Yeah. What's the difference between a strain and a variant? So every isolate of SARS-CoV-2 is a variant because they have sequence differences in the genome. Even if it's one. Of course, if they're both identical, then it's not a variant. It's just an isolate. But a variant would have some sequence difference. And a strain would have some distinct biological difference, some property that's different. And it takes time to determine a strain. And as Jens Kuhns liked to say, it would require an international committee to approve a strain of a virus, and that would take some time, wouldn't it, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, you get 3 scientists together and you get 60 different opinions.
Someone wished us Happy New Year. I forgot to highlight it. Happy New Year, everybody. I forgot to say that. Is this the first stream of the new year? Yeah. I guess so, yeah. Happy New Year, everyone.
Your course was over. Oh, you only did TWiV.
Look at this. We just passed 1,000 for only the second time. Welcome, everyone.
That's great. But you have 20,000 listeners from last week.
Yeah, these live streams get listened to quite a bit. And we're very grateful that you come to listen. You can come to argue. That's fine. But make sure you have a good argument, especially for Amy. What do you think of the CDC recommendation that you don't need a negative test to end isolation after testing positive? And
Yeah,
so,
it's not clear what a positive test is going to mean. I mean, are you shedding, or are you just hanging out and making a little protein
yeah,
that is also
exactly.
hanging out? I mean, these are scientific questions that you and I are interested in. And when you write a grant to do these experiments, you don't get funded. So,
I mean, this reflects the problem, Jack, that there's no good evidence that vaccinated people regularly shed enough virus to transmit. There is no good evidence for that, as I said earlier, because the right experiments have not been done. And so I think, if you're triple vaccinated and you have a positive antigen test, you could have that for 7 days. What are you supposed to do? Stay home? I don't think so. I think that's reasonable.
well, I
Um,
mean, people got vaccinated from with OPV and you shed it for a long period of time.
exactly. What percent of vaccinated that catch COVID get long haul? So last week, Daniel Griffin, who is our infectious disease physician who does a weekly TWiV, said that it's not zero, but it's very, very low. And so I can't give you a number because he didn't, but I assume it's less than 1%. But I think we need to wait longer because, well, first of all, we have to see how long it lasts, right? Maybe there's a longevity difference with vaccinated versus unvaccinated long COVID. I don't know. Any thoughts, Amy?
I have no idea, but what very low means. But initially, it was, what was it when you just got regular infection? It has to be much lower than that. I think that it's hard to report. I think
Mm-hmm.
people don't report it
Yeah.
all the time. Um, but I also wonder, okay, so I'm not saying it's not a horrible disease, but we accepted VAP.
Vaccine associated paralytic polio, VAP. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's acceptable, but nothing is perfect in this world.
No, I thought it was, Amy.
Yeah, well, my hair's not looking perfect today, so nothing's perfect.
Lucas saw a paper referring to the life cycle of a virus. Is there a better term? Yes, it should be
Reproductive.
reproduction cycle, but that's a big word, and the writers don't want to write it, so they say life cycle. You could talk about the human life cycle or the flea life cycle, sure, but no, virus. It should be reproductive cycle. That's what's in our textbook, reproduction cycle. We don't call it life cycle. All right, let's take a little detour for just 2 minutes. Elena wants to know, what's the TWiV origin story? Oh, TWiV came from a lab.
Yes, it did. It did.
So in 2008, 7, I started listening to podcasts and I had an idea. Hey, it would be cool to do a virology podcast. So I asked Dixon Despommier, my colleague at Columbia, to do it with me. And I knew he was a good teacher, so he started. And it was just an experiment. I didn't think anyone would listen, but I just wanted to try it. And people started listening, and people started sending in questions, and it got bigger and bigger. And then I asked Alan Dove to join us. Alan had been my PhD student a number of years previously, and he was a science writer, so I thought he would be a good perspective. And we got him in. And also because Dixon decided he'd like to go away for months at a time. And so I needed some other people. And then we would bring virologists on, and they would say, hey, I really like this. So Rich Condit came on to talk about pox viruses, and he said, hey, if you ever need someone to sit in, I'd love to do this. So we brought him on. We did that with Kathy Spindler and then with Brienne. So, we knew each other all beforehand. And in fact, for most of the other podcasts I started, I know most of the people, but not all of them. I didn't know Michael Schmidt, for example, from TWiM. I didn't know Daniel Griffin until he came to Columbia. Anyway, that's a short version of the story. Here's one for Amy. She also sent me this morning, I think. S. Gupta, Sanjay Gupta, CNN, was talking about how viruses tend to get less virulent over time, but I don't recall hearing this in Virology Live. Can you comment on that? No, we didn't. I did discuss it on Virology Live and saying that this is an idea that people have, that viruses get less virulent, but it's an idea, and there's only one bit of evidence for it, and it's not a human virus. It's the virus that was introduced into Australia to try and kill off the rabbits, and it didn't work. The virus and the rabbits the virus became less virulent, the rabbits became more resistant, so it didn't work. And so there's some evidence of evolution to lower virulence, but we have not certainly seen that in any human virus. And maybe now we could look for it with, SARS-CoV-2, but we're not there yet. Anyway, to say that viruses tend, let me just finish it. To say that viruses tend to become less virulent is a misrepresentation of the facts. Okay. Go ahead, Amy.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
You had we're taking a pause. But how are we going to determine if it's actually less virulent, or we have greater immunity?
These are excellent points,
and
I agree with you.
These people are now reinfected a third time or whatever. So I don't know how you would, unless you have a really good animal model. I'm not clear how you would determine whether or not the virus was less virulent, because that suggests that it's a viral change. It doesn't suggest that there's any component of that making it less virulent of a host change. And that's not true, right? Sure. I mean, that was my argument last week, right? Mm-hmm. About some other stupid thing that somebody said.
I agree.
So I don't know how you could distinguish that, because most animal models that you and I know of, at the end, the goal is the death of the animal. And if the animal is, even if it's not the goal, if the animal is in too severe distress, you have to sack the animal anyway.
Yep.
So I don't know how we would measure anything that is less virulent, unless you're only saying that it reproduces to lower titers, and I'm not sure that would correlate to less severe disease.
Yeah, no. What
there's no correlation
is that it would be, even if we have all the isolates of SARS-CoV-2 from the beginning to whatever end, it would be very hard to prove that, because animal models are, at best surrogates. By the way, this idea that you thought I had paused, Margaret Thatcher had that problem in Parliament all the time. She had some characteristic of her voice that they thought she was finished speaking, and she wasn't, and they would start clapping and interrupting her. So, okay. Do the results of a rapid antigen test correlate well with the ability of a person to transmit?
No.
I say we have zero data on that. And whatever data there are is not very good. Very hard to do, because you have to measure infectivity. Yeah, really. But you don't disagree with me.
Where is any of the data?
I'm just covering myself. I'm just covering myself, because someone's going to say, "Oh, what about this paper from this and that?" But, yes, you could say replication cycle. Let me tell you, in our textbook, we reserve replication to mean nucleic acid replication, and so the whole cycle is reproduction. And that's our little difference, so that we can make it clear what we're talking about. It's very important in the textbook.
So the Margaret Thatcher thing, did you get that from a movie or from her autobiography or something?
It's in the press that I think she ended sentences with her voice rising or lowering. I can't remember which one it was, but it signals usually in most people that you're finished, but she wasn't, and so they would interrupt her all the time. But you don't believe me?
No, I was just curious how you knew the fact. I believe you. So listen to this one. Somebody wrote in, I've been immunized for polio in the 80s and about to enroll in a 2022 polio study for NPOV or NPOV3. I didn't know that there was NPOV1 and NPOV3. I only knew about NPOV2.
2. Yeah, because VAP is mainly an issue with 2, right?
Right. So
And why three? Three is eradicated. You want to switch to because we're still vaccinating against three, right?
it's a bivalent vaccine now. Yeah, it's 3 in 1,
Yeah.
but we're going
So
to
maybe they
drop
want to
three.
substitute or have stockpile. I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that either. Um,
So do you think this NPOV1 and NPOV3 are Raul and Andy's vaccine just made on the different serotypes?
yeah, I think they swapped the capsid region out. Yeah, your buddy Raul. And look, I am
Both.
just now getting to when we started the live stream. All those questions were before we started. That's just to show you how much of a lag there is. And we're 40 minutes in, and Amy's about to leave.
I'll stay an extra 10 minutes extra.
You will make people very happy. All
I'll
right.
stay till 9 because I wanna edit the stuff because I have to go over my talk and work on my grant. Otherwise I will be fired at the end of June, which will not make me happy.
What are your thoughts on needing more than a cloth mask for school if fully vaccinated?
I think cloth masks are fine.
Yeah, a lot of people will disagree with us. And I said last time how I have been wearing only cloth masks, and someone said I was being arrogant. Okay.
Well, so
I'm
my
just telling you
aunt
what I'm doing. Yes, go ahead.
so my aunt, the one who got her mysterious PhD from some university, called me yesterday and asked, she was watching CNN and as somebody said, and I heard it today from David Angus again, and I heard it on Monday
Hmm.
from somebody else, that, with Omicron, you needed to double mask or wear a better mask. And I was like, well, that's what they said with Delta, and that's what they said with Alpha, and that's what they said with Beta.
Yes.
And
Sound familiar?
I'm yeah, exactly. It sounds familiar. It sounds like, you know, the scary boogeyman. And I'm thinking, well, at the end of the day, we proved that all of those didn't were transmitted the same way and didn't go through masks and, mysteriously, vaporize and whatever. So why am I thinking that this is going to be any different? And can't you come up with a better story? I don't like reruns.
James, Galaxy James, thank you for your contribution. If I test positive on the 28th, you think I'm contagious on January 7th? I don't think so,
No.
no. I don't. You may be antigen positive, though, but I don't think you're contagious, no. Two Farm Ds, thank you very much for your contribution. Happy New Year to all of you. And here is the purple sweater. Yes, purple sweater. Okay, this is one for Amy. With polio or EV68, in cases where the virus gets into the CNS, how long after infection is established does it typically take in humans?
So let me just understand this. So they want to know how long it takes to neuroinvade.
Yes.
Okay. So typically for polio, you got infected and you would develop paralysis about 3 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
That's what all the papers from David Bowden and others have written in the 30s and 20s.
Right.
With EV68, you get infected and you develop paralysis much faster. So you get infected and generally you develop paralysis within 7 to 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we're unclear exactly how 68, and that's the course of research that we've been focusing on unsuccessfully, I guess, of how 68 gets into the CNS.
Oh, we have a
Um,
paper coming out next week, right?
yeah, we do. We do. Um, because there's no viremic phase, despite what other people have thought. Because you very rarely find RNA fragments, and that's not infectious virus. Where it's very clear from work by Bowden that there is a viremic phase of polio, and that's why antibody therapy was actually useful at the very beginning.
Yeah,
Um,
because it took 3 weeks. So if the kid had some non-specific symptoms, you could treat them, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, but like when they actually went to go and find virus in the blood, they had, because there was no plaque assay, They had
Yeah.
a very hard time finding virus in the blood. It was like a window of 72 hours or something upon being infected. And then the kid would develop paralysis like 3 weeks later. And that's why it worked. And then after you did it for, you went too long after that period of time, that monoclonal therapy, the convalescent therapy didn't work, which is going to be a problem for others who are trying to repeat this with
Yeah.
EVD68. And that's why I have problems with a lot of literature that has come out about 68, because it's just biologically, you have no proof of that. And it's a different virus.
I would like to know the protection level of someone that's prior infected and vaccinated in regards to future variants. I think you're well protected. That combination, infected and vaccinated, gives you a good, well, at least in terms of antibodies, right? They can neutralize future variants, but it's probably not all that's important. But if you're interested in antibodies, then, and this is the justification for third doses in many cases, to broaden the antibody response. What do you think, Amy?
I think that if you're just looking at antibodies, yeah. I think that Seti and Crotty have a paper,
Yeah.
and he'll be on TWiV later this month, right?
Yeah, soon. Yep.
So you can discuss it with him, because I think he has a whole different perspective looking at T cells, because they're not so easily quantitated.
We have quite a good roundup of guests this month. Yeah. And of course, Friday. Well, you're not a guest, but you're going to be on Friday, right?
Yeah, I'll be there Friday.
I did not get a new camera. No, I just probably it's the light is a little closer because of the configuration of the room, and it may be part of what you're thinking. But it's the same camera I've been using for a long time now. Kang says, what assurance does a fully vaccinated and boosted elderly person with a couple of comorbidities, otherwise in good health, is among the 90% protected? I don't think you can give any assurance, right? Because you just don't know how you're going to react, comorbidities or not. Right, Amy?
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, that would be like my father, who has several comorbidities. Yeah.
I think that's the best you can do, right? You can be fully
Yeah.
vaccinated and boosted, be careful, wear a mask and so forth.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the best you can do for anything. Any pathogen can kill you, not just this one.
if a variant had increased antibody evasion, can that reduce inoculum size for infection and increase transmission, or are they completely unrelated? So I would not call it transmission. I would call it increase the likelihood of infecting someone, right? Because it's not a intrinsic property of the virus with respect to transmission. But I think that could do it, right, Amy?
Yeah, I guess. I
That
mean, I don't think it's gonna. I mean, is transmission how much virus how the virus goes through the air and infects another person?
no, in the recipients say, if you, let's say you needed 1,000 viruses to establish an infection, and now you have a variant with antibody evasion, and the problem is that if you are 6 months beyond your vaccine, you're not going to have much antibody in your respiratory tract mucosa. So if any antibody that's there could be avoided, maybe you need now 100 PFU to establish infection. So could that make the virus more fit? I would put it that way. And
Yeah, I
I'd
guess it
say,
could
sure,
make it
it
more
could.
fit.
Yeah.
I don't know that. Yeah, I guess it could make it more fit. I mean, the thing is we've talked about this also. Is we're only measuring IgG, and that's only in the lung, and IgA is in the upper tract, where you actually the infection is initiated and where you would transmit from. And so we don't really have any kinetics for that. So I don't really know what the kinetics. I don't know really what the kinetics would be. And it's not clear to me that the epitopes that IgA and IgG recognize are the same or different. Right?
Yeah. Do you agree that disappearance of Omicron will be as rapid as its rise? Who said that? Do you know who said that, Amy?
I believe that Scott Gottlieb said it, and
The hell
it's
does
been
Scott
in.
Gottlieb know? What the hell does he know?
Well, he's the one who came out and said Omicron was causing less severe disease because it was in the vaccinated, who it was in the people who had previous Delta infection, and then 10 seconds later he follows it up with immunity against Delta is totally different than any other immunity for any other
Oh
variant.
God, folks, you got to stop listening to these pundits.
Um,
Anyway, I don't know. Delta was around for a bit, right? Delta was pretty durable, and now it's declining. So that could happen to Omicron, or I don't know. I just don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know. I know the
Nobody
prediction
does.
is that it's gonna be the wave will dissipate in February, and I know I heard today. I don't know where they got the information that 90% of the cases in New York are Omicron, and I'm not clear that we're sequencing all of that. So unless you have an Omicron specific primer pair, I'm not clear how
Yeah.
you distinguish that.
So here's an issue, Amy. So at this hospital, 700 staff members out from positive tests, so short-staffed. So this is a problem because they're probably all well, right? Yet because they're positive, you don't want them to be in the presence of others, but we don't even know if they're going to transmit. So we're sending them home, and that's putting a strain on not only COVID patients, but all patients in a hospital. What do you do about, excuse me, what do you do about that, Amy?
Well, if they're vaccinated, you stop testing.
Aren't you concerned that they might transmit to hospital
Well, when
patients?
you show me that they're transmitting virus, I'll worry about it. But until you show me that they're transmitting virus, I'm not going to just assume that they are.
So
Um,
that's why we need to do the right studies to see if vaccinated people are transmitting or not, because of situations like this that we could avoid. That's what Amy is saying.
right. And you can't just do an epidemiological modeling study. So, for instance, my mother and her husband turned out to test positive over Christmas, right? She
Hmm.
tested positive 3 days before he did. They were in and out of a couple of hospitals. She was on the subway. I don't know. I don't really know. So one conclusion could be, even though they're triple vaccinated, one conclusion is, oh, well, they live together. They don't wear masks. They get in bed together. And she gave it to him. Or the other conclusion is something went wrong with the test. Not really clear why he didn't test, why he came up negative when she came up positive. There was some glitch, user glitch, whatever. And they all got it at the same exposure, one of the
Yeah,
hospitals.
yeah.
Or, just by coincidence, because he was in the hospital and she was on the subway going for infusions and various other things, they just coincidentally came across a ton of people who are unvaccinated and or whatever and gave it to them at a similar window of time frame, right? Now, unless we then take a sample from each one of them and sequence it every day, we're never going to know.
Agreed. I don't know if did I ever show this here on the live stream, Amy?
Oh no, we were talking about it the other day. No,
This is a
this Mark.
phage, and Mark Martin gave it to me. It flashes, or it stays on. Isn't that cool? I'm going to bring this to the incubator. Sorry,
It will be a
incubator.
good. It will be a good addition to your bookshelf. Yeah.
And did I show you this, Amy? My Christmas tree ornament that's in the form of it's poliovirus with a single receptor.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's got a
cool.
little Christmas.
Don't you have a couple of them?
I have 5, which is a important number, right?
Yes, it's a pentamer.
Look at the
You should
the
put
receptor matches
it's
my
yeah.
glasses. I could actually hook it and do the live stream with this on my face
You could, but I
because it
think it
is
would
about
look
viruses, right?
yeah, but I think it would look better than the trumpets on your little Christmas tree.
The kind that make you sick. Nick and Mike's are feeling anxious. I don't think you should feel anxious. You know why? Because the press is driving you to be anxious. It's making big deal out of these surges when in fact people in the hospital are mostly unvaccinated. People who are vaccinated are mostly not getting sick. Mostly, not all. So don't worry.
Not everyone. nothing is 100%. I mean, even death is not really 100% anymore because apparently I can cut off my head and cryo freeze it to be reincarnated.
No.
Apparently, there's some place that you could do this.
Yeah, right. Did you know?
I didn't think it was a good plan. I just said.
Did you hear about the new Pi variant? It's 3.14159 more transmissible than Omicron. That's a
I
good
might
one.
have I might have heard of a new variant. Andrew
It's a
texted
joke,
me.
Amy.
I understand, but there is also apparently another new variant coming out of Cambodia or something or other. I don't
Hmm.
know. Andrew
Okay.
texted me the other day.
There's worry that SARS-CoV-2 could build up resistance to the antivirals. Why is there not a similar concern about the vaccine causing resistance? Well, we are seeing resistance to neutralization to a certain extent by the variants, right? But there's not resistance to T cells, which is why the disease is kept low by the vaccines, and that's just not going to happen. But yeah, there is concern about antiviral resistance because we're using monotherapy, one drug at a time, which we learned from hepatitis C virus and HIV is a recipe for getting resistance.
Yep. And actually, you do get vaccine resistance, but you don't negate the vaccine because you have 30 B cell epitopes. And so if you change one, it's not a big deal.
If Omicron is somewhat immune evasive, doesn't that mean it's more transmissible? No, no.
No.
Transmission is a different thing than immune evasion. Immune evasion is part of fitness. The overall fitness of a virus can be improved by different things, including immune evasion, including transmission. And in that study I quoted, they said the fitness improvement, which is why a variant drives through a population, is mediated by immune evasion, which, by the way, is what drives influenza virus variants through the population, displacing previous variants. They're not called more transmissible. They are immune evasive and they're more fit. Hi, Amy. I took 2 Modernas for the booster. Should I mix or go with Moderna?
Either one, whichever's available, doesn't make
Yeah,
a difference.
I don't think it makes much of a difference. Thank you, John,
Right.
for your contribution. 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, 2 minutes, and then I need to go and do some work.
If long COVID is indeed caused by autoantibodies, does it mean that each reinfection will cause B cells to produce these autoantibodies again and re-trigger long COVID? I'm not sure it's all caused by autoantibodies. Are you, Amy?
I'm not sure. And autoantibodies don't, I'm not sure that they always decrease. And so I don't really know.
No, I mean, I think that's a good question because if you have memory B cells to these self epitopes, right? Does that mean you're going to constantly be producing them? I don't think we know the answer to that, but I think it's a potential, right?
Yeah, I mean, for other diseases, it's true. When you have antibodies against yourself, uh, you can get memory B cells against them, and but it's really hard to get rid of unless you irradiate your immune system.
Does the fact that the virus can't just contend with innate immunity mean that one might get mild symptoms sooner, can hide from the adaptive immune system? I don't quite understand that. In other
Can you
words,
translate the question for me?
okay,
I'm
so
lost.
the virus can't just contend with innate immunity. Oh, okay.
So
So
if the virus can't,
if innate immunity limits infection, would you get mild symptoms sooner because you can't hide from the adapt? I don't think it has anything to do with that, frankly. But I'm a little confused. Sorry.
maybe they
Okay.
can rephrase it so it's
Yeah.
less confusing. Or so yeah, I don't really understand.
So what does N protein actually do, Amy?
It's part of the it's needed for replication, it's needed for assembly of the particle, it coats the RNA. It's very important. It's a fundamental structural protein.
It is coding the RNA, right?
Yeah,
And
but it's
probably
also needed for
helps.
replication.
Yes, it's needed for
Um,
RNA synthesis. Yeah.
and it also helps egress and assemble the particle. I mean, it's multifunctional, and we don't really know all of the nuances for it because lots of domain deletions end up with lethal viruses, and they're hard to study, right?
Yeah. Historically, we haven't seen any long-term effects from a vaccine after 2 months, but could a long-term effect show up years later from this newer mRNA technology? Well, it's now been over a year, right? When did you first get your dose, Amy?
December 19th,
20,
whatever, 2020.
2020. Yeah. So now we're over a year out, and I doubt it very much. We haven't
Well,
seen it with any other vaccine, which doesn't mean you rule it out, but I doubt it.
well, maybe that's why everybody thinks I'm autistic, is it's the side effect of the vaccine. What do you think about that one?
No, 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 no. That's silly. Anyway, no,
I
only
know, it was important. It was the point to being silly.
it's only one or two people that say that, right?
A couple more, but that's
My
okay. All
my
right,
wife's
902. One more.
my wife's gynecologist said she has seen fertility issues with the vaccinated. Have you seen any data that confirms her views? What are known fertility issues? I have not seen any clinical observation that would confirm that. No, none whatsoever. Have you, Amy?
No, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. I've not seen that. It's quite the opposite.
Okay.
Um,
And your last one is from Sandy, who says you look lovely in purple.
oh, thank you. I
Sure,
like purple.
you sure you don't want to stay a few more minutes?
All right, fine. I'll stay a few more
Could
minutes.
you stay till 9:10?
Yeah, I could stay till 9:10.
Because when you leave, I get in trouble.
How do you get in trouble?
I get in fights with people.
Fine, I'll stay longer so we don't have any more trouble. There's no need to have any fights with anybody.
I don't really fight, but I get in disagreements. But
I don't know why. Okay, let's do some more besides looking good in purple. Purple's a great color.
can you point out problems with over-vaccination? Suppose you've got a man who has COVID twice, has 2 Sputniks, and now is required to get 3 mRNA shots for a COVID pass. Is there a real danger? I don't think so. I don't think 5 is an issue because we know from experience that we can give quite a few immunizations to kids and it doesn't cause issues. So I
Well,
don't
they're
think that's
giving
an issue.
4 to Israel. They're already on 4 in Israel, and there have been reports of people here who are immune compromised who've gotten 5 or 6. Um, and they don't seem to have any issue.
Yeah.
I'm just not clear. I guess Sputnik isn't recognized by the United States as an appropriate vaccine.
Yeah, it's correct. It's not. It doesn't have EUA or anything here, so you can't have a COVID pass here. Yeah, which I think is a problem. We should fix that in some way.
Well, I don't think it's right
I agree.
because you don't want somebody. Americans don't want other countries saying, "Well, you used, I don't know, Novavax or the ferritin vaccine and stuff, and that doesn't have EUA in Europe, so you're not, you
Yeah,
have to go
yeah.
home." So I don't think that that's a good plan.
People are saying Omicron is airborne, spread through small droplets as opposed to larger. I'm so glad you put that precisely, Andy. That's absolutely right. Arguing masks don't work. It's nonsense. There's zero data to support that. It's just people spewing it out in the press, pundits, and it's wrong. If there were data,
So
we would talk about it, right, Amy?
yeah, so when Fouché did his transmission experiments
Right.
in the ferrets, were the alterations that conferred better transmission between the animals in HA,
Yes.
and they were in the receptor binding domain?
No, not all of them. There were some in the stem which appeared to confer stability to the protein. Shocking, right?
Yeah,
Those are
flabbergasted.
those are very good, very interesting experiments. Um, okay, I also like to know your thoughts on CDC changing the time frame for booster from 6 to 5 months. I think Amy, you said last time 5 would be fine, right?
Yeah, it's fine, but I don't know why you would make it shorter. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, they're not reading the literature because the literature is very clear that the longer you go out, the better.
yeah,
So,
agreed.
if you were to change the time frame, then you should have made it 6 to 9 months, not 6 to 5 months.
Right.
So, I don't understand what papers they're reading because that's not what they're saying. Maybe
And
they're reading them upside down. I don't
I
know.
just want to show you that you got fans, Amy. Amy thinks that no one likes her.
Yeah, it's good.
It's tough being Amy.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough at this particular moment in time for being me, but that's for a separate reason, right?
Who has a better immune system? The person who almost never gets sick but is laid out for a while when they do, or the person who frequently gets sick but clears the infection rapidly?
Ah, I always say the person who frequently gets sick but clears the infection rapidly than the person who never gets sick, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you would say anything about.
I think so. I rarely get sick, at least with infectious diseases. And I happen to think I have a good immune system, but I don't have any data for that. So you could just say, Vincent, you're blowing air, and you'd be right. But I
I don't
agree
know.
with Amy.
But I think it's like asking, is Ebola more virulent than polio? And it's, you can't really have that conversation.
Yeah.
You know, you can't make comparisons about virulence between different viruses. So I don't think you can do, I think that this is kind of similar. I don't think you can do it.
Now, Brett Weinstein, oh boy, is touting vitamin D. Right. Evolutionary biologist touting vitamin D. Stay in your lane. It's good in general. There are no data that say it's specifically good for COVID. And as Daniel Griffin said, there's not going to be any. So it doesn't hurt to take it. He takes it.
Yeah, well, everybody should take it just because you want good bones.
And also, if you're in the dark all day, right, like we are.
Yeah, it's in the dark all day, and the vitamin D is required for calcium absorption, and calcium is required for good bones. So you take
Yeah.
vitamin D so you can facilitate calcium absorption because it's like one of the most toxic ions in your body, and it's really tightly regulated
Yeah.
and stuff. So, but why are we re-talking about vitamin D? We talked about that like 15 months ago.
Oh, people bring up stuff all the time. You know that.
Yeah, I wish they would be a little more, you
Okay.
know.
In RNA replication, are single base mutations completely random, or are there sequences that are more likely than others to trip up the polymerase? Good question, Doug. Do you know the answer, Amy?
No. I think that some of them are random and there are hot spots for slippery sequences too.
Yeah. I think it's largely random, but yes, there are some slippery hot spots. Okay, here's one. Talking about tripping up. Are we close to herd immunity?
Well, we're closer to herd immunity than we were a year ago.
I mean, countries in Africa, some of them are less than 1% vaccinated. In the U.S., it's 62%. I don't know what fraction of the U.S. has been infected, but yeah, we're close. We're closer, as Amy says. Eventually, we'll get there. And here is your new variant, Amy, B1.64.2. I don't know if that it is a variant of concern. It hasn't been designated as such.
No, but I think that that's the number that Andrew spewed out last night. But
And it didn't get a Greek letter yet, right?
no,
What's the risk of an infected triple vaccinated person in their 60s of developing serious COVID? I think it's quite low, right?
well, you and Doris are in that age group, and you're triple vaccinated, and neither of you have ever gotten severe COVID. So
I've never tested, so I don't know. Well, no, I
Yeah,
didn't
but
get severe. You're right.
yeah,
You're right.
exactly. So
I think you have a
I
good chance. Okay, here's from
I think you don't have a good chance of getting severe
Yes,
disease.
agreed. So the UK has just announced a follow-up PCR is not needed if someone tests positive on a lateral because of high prevalence. Do you agree that this is a good way forward? What do you think, Amy? You're the testing maven.
Yeah, I think it's a good way forward. No
I
need
agree.
to PCR. I mean, I was adamant when my mom tested positive that there was no PCR testing whatsoever. She'd be positive for like the next 5 years, and I couldn't deal with it.
Oh,
It's
and by
like,
the way, I think you sent this to me. Didn't Tony Fauci just say he's not concerned about how many infections now? He's concerned about hospitalizations, right?
yes, I
So
did send
testing,
it to you. I
testing.
did
Tony is
send it
not so
to
concerned about testing. So I agree. I think that's good.
you. I sent it to you.
Can a prior COVID infection create comorbidity that could make subsequent COVID infections more dangerous? I've heard a lot of people having a harder time second infection. Yes, I would think that, for example, if you sustain lung damage, which is highly possible if you have severe COVID, then the second time that could be a problem because you don't have much capacity in it. The timing is also a matter because it takes time for lung to repair, right, Amy?
Yeah, for sure.
And okay, we got clarifications here. Is there any chance of recombination between SARS-CoV-2 and influenza in a human host to produce a viable virus?
No.
Do you think you could, if you had co-infection of cells by both viruses, do you think you could get a little bit of sequence incorporated into the other virus just by the polymerase, copying?
Yeah, but I'm not. Yeah, but it would have to be the mRNA of influenza since that's a negative stranded virus, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it technically should be coded in ribosomes or something or other. Although, there's ribosomal RNA bisimilar
I was
in
thinking of the same
polio.
thing.
So
So their host, it can go into the virus. So I don't see why not. I don't see why not.
I don't know why that would make a viable virus because even if you did, so even if you did, it wouldn't necessarily make a viable protein, right? Even
Yeah,
if you did, I
yeah.
don't think it has any effect because it would throw the remaining portion of the genome out of frame, right?
Yep. Oh, so Lola wants to know if vaccinated people are less contagious. So we really covered this, right? And we think so. But there's certainly no data that they are as contagious as unvaccinated.
Right.
Thank you, Rob, for your support of the incubator. It's very much appreciated.
Good.
Incubator's coming along nicely. Not quite done. We need to finish soundproofing it, right, Amy? We need to get some shelves and chairs in, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we're gonna go sit in some chairs after my grant goes in February.
Okay. Joe said, entire family, including kids, all vaccinated. 3 of us getting over COVID. Assume Omicron based on symptoms. Should be supermoon. No need for booster. I
Sure.
don't think you need a boost. Nope. No boost.
I mean, I don't know how they based it was Omicron based on symptoms because technically,
Yeah.
if you already have an immune response, any infection, whether or not it's alpha, beta, gamma, I don't know, epsilon, whatever, it should all be much more mild.
Struffoli and espresso time. Yeah. By the way,
What is strafuli?
struffoli are the little deep fried dough, basically. Little. It's sort of
It's
like
not
a
pizza
gnocchi,
dough,
but
is it?
I don't think it's pizza dough. No, it's pastry dough. You deep fry them, you coat them in honey, and you put nonpareils on them. I have some upstairs, but I don't want to go get them.
So
And
does it come in that thingy that looks like this?
it can come in a
That
stack
big
with a
period,
cellophane on top. Yeah, it comes in a big pile
like
with a cellophane.
a pyramid looking thing?
It
Like
could.
a
Yeah, they
sign?
make them at pyramids. Yeah, strufoli. It's a holiday thing. Now, I got a note from my Italian friend in Canada that panettone,
Oh,
panettone is pronounced that way in most of Italy because I was taught by my Italian-born father and grandparents panettone, but this man was saying Renzo. Was it Renzo? He's saying it's panettone.
so do you
Okay.
think the difference is regional?
Why not? There could be regional differences, right?
Yeah, maybe the guy's from the north and you're from the south, right? I mean, there's huge regional differences in Spanish.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But if people are vaccinated and wear masks, why are countries like Italy closing again? There's just no reason to close, in my opinion. And I think Amy would agree, right?
For sure.
No reason to close. We have vaccines that work. There's no reason to close anymore. This is nonsense. Universities closing is nonsense. We said that last time. We have a distinct view from other people on this. But even Daniel
No,
would agree.
Daniel agreed.
Yeah.
Daniel fully agreed.
Thank you, Fishy Lizard, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. What is the difference between a variant and a recombinant? I guess a recombinant would be a form of a variant, right, Amy?
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to really like try and it's not just finding a single nucleotide change, right? That's what we're doing is we're just aligning them and looking for single nucleotide changes.
Yeah.
You'd have to look for larger regions that are shared by the genome to look at recombination breakpoints and, stuff. It's a lot more intensive.
We just passed 1,200 people, the most ever, Amy. See, you stay and it goes up. It's amazing.
It's good.
And
it's good,
some
hopefully.
of you, give us a thumbs up below the video so we can be heard by more people. I think this is important information. For those of us who are triple vax, can we be done with masking and testing and restrictions? So we've told you that you should be done with testing. The restrictions are not always based on you, right? So if you go in New York to a restaurant, you have to show them your vaccine card or you can't get in. You have to wear a mask. So you may have to wear a mask where they tell you to. When I take the train, I have to wear a mask. But other places that don't, yeah, you can be done with it.
So
would you say that's fair, Amy?
Yeah. Somebody I know just came back from Tennessee and he said no masking, no nothing. And somebody else I know, so Andrew just came back from Florida. He went to Florida for the holidays and there's no vaccination, there's no masking, there's no nothing. So, or at least that's where he was. That's how it was. And while New York City is very strict about going into a restaurant with your vaccination card, according to my family, New Jersey is not as strict.
No, you don't need vax in New Jersey. But mind you, Anna, unvaccinated people will get infected and they may get very sick. All right, but that's their choice. If you're vaccinated, I think you're good to go.
But if you're unvaccinated for any disease, you get infected and you could get very sick. You're unvaccinated for polio, you could get infected and develop polio. You're unvaccinated for measles.
Of course.
So
this is nothing special that we're talking about here,
right?
For sure.
So at some point, So at some point, these outbreaks are going to be like the little pockets of outbreaks where vaccine compliance wanes against measles, and you have those big outbreaks like in Disneyland and in Minnesota and then in Westchester and stuff. So I think this is the transition point to that, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Which vaccines should be replaced with mRNA versions? Which are the worst that need the most improvements? I think the flu vaccine is a big one for improvement, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that the mRNA version is going to be an improvement if you just target the same epitopes. From what I understand, it's the targeting of the epitope that isn't so good.
So HA alone is not going to be the story, right?
Right, because we've made multiple vaccines against HA, right, using multiple platforms, and you get the same thing. So isn't Peter's idea that you use the stock?
Correct.
And so if you
the
use
stalk has the highly conserved epitope, so you can get a broadly acting vaccine. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know that the platform is going to make such a big difference, right?
I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot of testing in the next years of different vaccines. I think flu is a big one. What other ones need? I mean, many of the other vaccines are quite good. We have a great shingles vaccine. Polio vaccine is good. What do you think about an activated polio vaccine, Amy? Is that... Oh, we did that at the NIH symposium. We proposed mRNA vaccines with the capsid with self-cleaving sequences, remember?
Yeah, but it's basically the same. It's basically the same as, and it's basically the same idea as the VLPs that Andy has already made in plants and other
Yeah,
ways,
yeah.
right? It's nothing different. Um, you know, you I mean, I guess the only difference there is that in plants, you have to make sure it folds properly, that the antigenic structure would be the same as in a human. And I
Yeah,
guess the
yeah.
probability of it being more similar by just encoding, just giving people the RNA and having their cells make the VLP would be more analogous, but I don't know. We'll see.
I think we need to see. It's a good question. I think some will work well, depending on how they're formulated.
Well, I also
Even,
think it really depends on the epitope that you target, right?
of course, it's important to consider. Yeah. And Yvonne says we are testing for the unvaxxed in the U.S. for sure. I mean, in other countries, people can't get vaccinated. They don't have a choice, but here they do. And yes, we are testing for them. Absolutely. I've been wondering if you can get more than one vax with the same viral vector, like COVID and flu. More than one type of vax per platform, like mRNA COVID and mRNA shingles. I don't see why not, right?
Well, I'm a little confused about the question. So, is the RNA in the mRNA vaccine encoding for both flu and COVID?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
Together.
think that that's a good. I don't think that that's going to work well.
No, why? You're going to get interference?
I don't know what interference means. I just think that I think I think having two different viruses that are totally unrelated encoded for it in the same RNA is not going to work out well. It's because already when you do bivalent, it's you lose efficacy against one of
Yeah,
them, right?
yeah.
Like, so we pooled all three polios together to make trivalent polio, but we lost the efficacy against 2 and 3. I believe that they were not
Yeah,
as,
but
so
as you know,
that,
there are other bacterial vaccines that are multivalent, with over 20 antigens. So it
right, but
depends.
they're not different. They're not different. They're
Okay,
the same bacteria. They're not different.
fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough.
Like the guy who thinks that he can make the 40 rhinos, right, vaccine,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But he's not putting rhino plus RSV, right?
Okay, okay. Should I be anxious about the new variant in France?
No.
We told you not to be anxious about Omicron, and I think we were right. My girlfriend cuts over 100 people's hair per week. She's triple vaxxed, wears an N95, and I got her. Never got COVID. Oh, you got it. Never got. Should I buy her a tighter fit or not worry so much?
Not worry so much. She's fine.
So not in favor of mass testing, then the whole Michael Mina proposal is out the window.
What's the Michael Mina proposal now?
No, the original one, the lick a stick.
Well, if he had gotten it together 2 years ago, I would have been in favor for it. But he
Yeah,
couldn't
two
get it
years.
together 2 years ago. Now
Certainly.
I've moved past. I don't need the same thing that I needed 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, no,
I
no,
need
absolutely
something
right.
different.
When at the time before we had vaccines, yeah, testing lick a stick, daily cheap testing would have been perfect. We didn't get it, and as Amy has mentioned, it's hard to make that test, and now we don't need it. No. How long will till we hear about Israel giving out fifth doses? Honestly, giving a fourth is absurd. Yes, we do agree that it's absurd, and don't be surprised. I mean, we're not
I
even
say May.
vaccinating. What?
I say May. They'll come out and they'll tell me
In
in May
May?
that they
Okay.
have to give a fifth dose. May.
Indeed. Do you think the way Omicron is burning through population means the pandemic is burning itself out? Do pandemics burn themselves out, Amy?
I believe the flu pandemic burnt itself out 5 years later.
1918?
Hmm.
Well, I mean, it stopped, right? I don't know what
Right.
burnout means. What does burnout mean?
Like,
You reach a
like you
level of
lose.
population immunity?
Yeah. I think that this is just you saw a wave, you see peaks and valleys throughout the 1918 pandemic. I think that this is just another peak and wave. I don't think it means anything.
I think enough of the world is not vaccinated yet that it's not the end right here. But
Right.
as I said, if you're vaccinated, then you're okay.
Right.
Uh,
I
with a
mean, it's kind of
suspected,
sad that we're starting the third year and we have vaccines and stuff. So we're three-fifths basically, or almost halfway through the time frame it took for flu to get under control. And flu, we didn't travel as much, the world wasn't as populated, and we didn't have all these interventions.
hmm
So I think it's just kind of sad.
with a suspected Omicron positive, they don't use the S. Same other two primers. So what would have been called negative last month with only two primers is called positive now. False positive. You know what this is about, Amy?
No.
They redesigned the primers so they would pick up Omicron rather than have a dropout, right?
No, they dropped out using the S primer. And so they
Yeah.
said, so I don't know how you could tell that you have an Omicron variant, you're infected with Omicron, because when you go to get tested, the Omicron light bulb does not flash. It's, the
Yeah.
lights that are
Yeah.
on the food truck outside, they don't say Omicron going through, like, it says Italian beef and
Got
lamb
it.
shank and whatever, right?
Yeah, okay.
So if you just drop out S, I don't know how you're telling that you have Omicron.
With a dropout, you mean? No, the only way you would know would be to sequence unless you have
Right,
specific primers,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Best wishes to your mom.
Thank you.
Thank you, M.E.A., for your contribution. Really appreciate it. German opera singer, how difficult would it be to design a durable flu vaccine maintaining durable protection for many years? Does diverse antigenic variation make this unattainable? So the antigenic variation is in mainly the HA, the B cell epitopes. And T cells are very important for preventing severe flu. And I think the current vaccines don't do a good job at inducing durable T cell immunity. So that's the key to do that. It's a little harder, but I think that can be done. Maybe different vectors. Adeno-vectors are good at inducing T cells.
Yeah, but wouldn't you also, isn't that whole idea of the universal flu vaccine to get also so that you would not have to deal with the diverse antigenic variation of flu?
Yeah.
And then so you talked about Rafi's paper with Shane, right? About the lack of T cells because we don't adjuvant, or was
Yeah,
that
the
with
flu
Boucher?
vaccine, yeah.
Yeah.
That was B cell immunity. No, that was B cell memory, not T cells.
I thought that then, oh, wait, I thought it was then that Alessandro Seti said that the vaccine didn't target T cells for flu.
It's not good at inducing T cells, yes.
Yeah.
So that needs to
But
be improved.
how good is viral infection at inducing T cells?
I think viral infection is good. The problem with it is that you could die, right? So we need a vaccine. And
Lots of people get flus that don't die.
I understand, but many do, and so that's why we vaccinate. Yet the vaccines don't provide as good protection as
No, I
natural
know. I
infection.
was just wondering if T cells were actually induced by the virus
So
or not.
Amy has not yet posted. It will go up tomorrow, but the link is here. I will make this larger. Okay? That's the blog, virology.ws. And sometime tomorrow, which will be Thursday here in the northeastern U.S., where it's already tomorrow in countries, it'll go up. And she'll explain this testing idea, right, Amy?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I have to flesh it out.
Thank you,
But
Pamela.
I have to work on my talk first.
Yeah, no doubt. We're going to talk at 11 about your talk.
Yeah,
If you
and
want, I
my
can
mind.
flush out the the blog post and show it to you for your approval.
No, we can do it together. I started. I pasted a document together. I started.
Okay.
But yeah,
Thank you,
I
Pamela,
don't
for your
want you to have
contribution.
extra work.
And thank you for your attention.net for your contribution. Is there any concern that SARS-CoV-2 could cause a cytokine storm? Yeah, it does. That's severe COVID. It's a cytokine storm. Correct, Amy?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just that Steph is here, and she has a new icon there. Look.
Is
Okay,
it
good
a
evening.
gorilla?
No, I don't know what it is. I should make it bigger, but then everyone. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Oh, it's a Buddha, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's not a
So
Buddha, but it's
it's
a
like the
religious.
female version of the Buddha.
I'm sorry, it's not a Buddha, but it's anyway. Thank you, Steph, for moderating. We also have tonight Mr. Ozzy Cam, Les, Frank,
And
and
Vanity Nutrition.
Vanity is from 5 Miles Up. Yep. Thank you all for moderating. We appreciate your contribution.
Yeah, it's good.
Amy, why would one place tell me I was positive, and when I did a PCR test after 7 days, it came back negative?
Because so you could have been positive, and after 7 days, you could be negative. The virus could be cleared completely. Sure.
Right. Hi, Animal Party. Things are so COVID-y here in Rhode Island in pediatrics. We test everyone multiple times. It's exhausting. Well, that's the
Stop
thing.
testing.
In the hospitals, you have to test, right? That's why you're there.
I don't know.
We never said testing is dumb. We just said don't overuse it. So you can hear what you want, folks, and then go, leave. I don't care. We're trying to make a reasoned opinion here. And if you don't agree with us and you say, I don't agree, I'm out of here, goodbye. It's fine. But you do make some good points. Bye. Bye-bye. You want us to beg you to stay? How do I describe to vax hesitant how a vaccine gets to the lymph nodes from the injection site?
So it gets presented.
Well, how does it get from the injection to the lymph node?
Well, so here's how it works, right? Your cell that took up the vaccine makes protein. The protein gets exposed on the surface of the cells to dendritic cells that float around your body, that's home after they float around your body to get more food is the lymph node. So they pick up the antigen and then they go to the lymph node and they talk to the T cells and the B cells. Yeah, so it's the simplest version that I can give you.
Drain certain parts. So all the fluids go towards the lymph nodes and through them. So if you stuck something in your shoulder, besides being picked up by cells, as Amy said, the antigen actually could drain through it. And if there are B cells that react with it, that will cause the B cells to proliferate. It's very cool. Your lymph nodes are very important, and most of us don't think about them very much.
I don't know. Morris. They're constantly telling my mom to take them. Is that one of the solutions was we were going to take them out? I was thinking, yeah, not such a good philosophy. Not such a good philosophy when you just had your tonsils removed because people didn't like the things hanging in the back of the throat. They didn't do anything.
Morris, thank you for your contribution. I agree with Amy's position, or testing. In fact, I will go further to say I don't agree with not allowing unjabbed people to travel domestically.
Well, that's what Fauci wants. He wants a vaccine mandate for getting on domestic flights.
I don't agree with that because you're protecting mainly unvaccinated people. I don't think that's appropriate. I had taken a home test because I had symptoms, but it was negative. It was something else. And yeah, don't forget that there are something else's going around, right, Amy?
Yeah, where's my beautiful slide? Flu is up significantly. It's like out of control.
So Amy does not agree with Michael Minna. Amy has never agreed. Well, actually, she originally agreed with the lick-a-stick, but then after a few months when it didn't materialize, Amy would say, oh, where is it? Yeah, but I didn't know.
Yeah, well, when you get on a podcast and you say, oh, I have boxes in my office, I'm just looking for a distributor. I wanted to know how long it took to find a distributor.
Yeah.
Three, 6 months, 18 months.
okay, so Michael came on to TWiV, and that really got him national attention, and he admits it. And he said, "I have a box of these tests right here." There was no box. I mean, maybe they were pregnancy tests. I don't know, lateral flow for something else, but there was no box of tests. Frank is sitting in my house wearing a mask due to a numbskull in my office being sick and not masking. I wore a mask around him. Probability I spread it to my family if I'm infected. Well, you're vaccinated and boosted, right? I think
Plus,
the
he wore a
probability,
mask.
very low probability, Frank. And I'm sorry you
Less
have
than
to sit home.
1%.
But yeah,
But
this
he
is a
doesn't need to
problem.
sit home and wear a mask. He just needs he wore a mask around the person. So that protected the person from him and him from the person. And now he's vaccinated, so he's not going to spread it at all. I would guarantee it's less than 0.01%, which is like minimal, which is like almost not detectable.
Is it at all possible that adeno vaccines are handling Omicron better? Some people were speculating this because the spike in South Africa is not as severe as the U.S. You can't compare the populations, right, Amy?
No, you can't compare the populations because behavior is different. But if you actually did that experiment in the same population and you found that to be true, that would support your idea that adenovirus vectors are better at inducing T cells.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I wish your parents the best. My parents are in the same boat.
That's
Good.
great.
Canada has lost its mind. They are spending $1 billion on tests we don't need. In the UK, they're pushing testing more than ever. They test before socializing, so you can avoid getting infected and spreading. I don't agree with that, because if you're vaccinated, you're going to have, at worst, a mild infection. Yes, so Frank is triple vaxxed, right? As we said, you shouldn't have to sit at home there.
And definitely not sit at home wearing a mask. That's ridiculous.
If normal cold coronaviruses infect us over and over every 12 months or so, why doesn't COVID? And if it can, how could herd immunity ever happen? Well, I think it will.
For sure. And I don't know that I didn't get that common cold coronas infected us every 12 months from either Shaman or from Jesse Bloom. It was like 3 or 8 years.
Yes, that's right. And I think COVID is on its way to doing that, Bobby. It will, but it takes time. This is a real problem here. Lori Garrett on Twitter claimed the purpose of vaccines are to prevent infection and transmission, not disease. Comments. It's wrong. They're not. They are tested. Polio vaccines were tested to prevent polio, not infection. You just need to look at the history, right, Amy?
Right.
See, this is a problem, Amy.
Yeah, I understand it's a problem. But if you had a calm, coherent discourse with her, I'm sure we could get her to understand why this is not correct. And we could get her to understand why this is not correct and why 90% of all vaccines, and the only one that you and I can name that doesn't prevent infection, that does prevent infection, is HPV, and we have conquered many of them so that at least 3 have been discussed as being eradicated. Now, whether or not the other 2 ever get eradicated is a separate issue, right?
Yeah. Yes, calm and collected discourse. You're right.
Yeah, so I she can have a difference of opinion, but, I think we can discuss it calmly about why, this is what you do, and this is where we went wrong when we tested people 2 days after they got the vaccine and said, "Oh my God, vaccine infection rates go down." It's like, oh my God, when you give somebody a bolus of monoclonal antibodies, 2 days later, they have antibodies against the virus. Did you know that?
Of course. Are the mRNA vaccines against COVID very rare in terms of having such a high rate of prevention of death? I think 90-some% is exceedingly rare, right, Amy?
Um, well, what pathogen do we have a vaccine against that really causes death?
Well, flu can kill you, but the percent effectiveness against death is not in the 90s. I know
Yeah, but yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I was thinking
polio
more
can
like,
kill you. Polio can kill you, right? I
yeah,
mean,
but
this
not to the degree that like I don't think the fatality rate
no,
of polio is on par with COVID, right?
no, I agree.
And with SARS-CoV-2. And that's all I was thinking was like the majority of diseases that we have vaccinations, the case fatality rate is low. Like measles is low, polio is
Yeah,
low, Hep B is low. I mean, I don't know. Maybe yellow fever is high.
it's not as high as COVID, I believe. It's a good
Yeah,
question, though. Do you know, Amy, if Omicron causes cytokine storm? Does it cause severe COVID? So, I mean, in South Africa, I don't think they saw any severe COVID, right?
I don't know.
I'm gonna ask Daniel that tomorrow.
Yeah,
That's a good
you can ask
question.
Danielle because I don't know. I would assume since they said that the majority of people that they tested that they had found the Omicron in were previously infected, that it would be hard to find somebody who's completely naive, right?
Yeah.
From either exposure or being unvaccinated, but I don't really know.
How do you see the testing situation developing this year, more or less? Well, I think my prediction is that you'll see if Amy is right, and eventually people will come around to her position.
Yeah,
And
in the fall.
despite what some of you are saying, and for example, Jan says when hospitals are overrun, many more people die. They're overrun with unvaccinated people. Jan, that's their choice not to be vaccinated. And as someone said earlier, we're testing for the unvaccinated. Do we really need to do that? You've been given your choice. You've made your choice. I don't think that's the right approach. Um, let's see here. What field of science is the best source of COVID information? The field of Amy.
No, not the field of Amy. I think it depends on what you want to know.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. So virology is going to tell you the fundamental properties of the virus, which takes time, more time than is evolving in a pandemic situation. Immunology can explain, how vaccines work and so forth. But they take time. Those experiments take time. And epidemiology is, real-time reporting. You get numbers and you put them through statistical programs. And I think it's okay to tell you the case numbers, but making extrapolations about virus properties is fraught with problems when you use epidemiological data. Good question, though, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Joe. For mild symptoms similar to hay fever, including cough, should vaccinated people test?
No.
No, no, no. Only if you're, really feeling badly, and if you have to go to the hospital, they will test you to find out what's wrong with you.
Yeah, that's prudent testing. I'm for
But
prudent
if you have
testing.
mild symptoms and you test positive, what are you going to do? You can't do anything. There's no treatment, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
do you think repeated SARS-CoV-2 infection provides immunity comparable to 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine?
Yes.
I do think so, yes. And Anna says vaccines are to prevent disease. Thank you, Anna. That's right. Yep. Oh, look, this is funny. What did Michael Mina do or not do to get on Amy's SL? She just told you. You know what the SL is, right?
Yeah, the shit list.
Oh, you can't say that on YouTube.
Oh,
Just kidding.
okay. Well,
Okay, here we go. Several preprints suggesting decreased infectivity in lung tissue. They're flawed. I know you're not sarcastic. They're flawed. Amy and I have discussed these a bit. They're just flawed. There's no time zero, and they measure PFU per mil instead of per cell. Those are my two problems. I mean, some of them started day 1, day 2. You have to know what happens at day 0. I don't get it, but they're going to be published because the reviewers are not going to care. Right, Amy?
Yes, they will be published. Many of these papers, I could almost guarantee that the paper that of someone that I like I recently discussed with somebody probably also doesn't have a time 0, because his last couple didn't have a time 0. So I'm thinking that probably is a trend he's following, but
Mm. In many European countries, hospitals are struggling and innocent people. So how can you say it doesn't matter if unvaccinated? It's their choice, Tony, not to be vaccinated. How can you say that? I mean, I understand the hospitals have to protect them, right? That's their job. But they're overburdening them because they decided not to be vaccinated, and not for a good reason. So do you understand it? Doesn't Daniel say not to miss an opportunity to test? Yes, but he's saying it less. And if you listen to him, he'll agree. Every time I interject and say we're testing too much, he'll say, I agree, we're testing too much. All right, so Patricia, I know you want to test. That's fine. We just disagree. Would you be willing to testify at court against the requirement for the third shot for people who've had COVID and got 2 doses of a vaccine? No, I'm not going to testify in a court, but scientifically, I think that if you are infected and you get 2 doses of vaccine, you don't need a third dose. And the papers show that. So you don't need me. You could just read the papers, right? Right, Amy? Get Amy to testify.
Right. No, I don't. I am too busy. I'm too busy.
And Sally points out the unvaccinated in the hospital affects everyone when they can't deliver. Yes. So they are imposing this burden. And I understand that you say, okay, if we tested everyone, we'd avoid that. Why don't they just get vaccinated? Isn't that a simpler solution? What's the talk about Amy getting another job? Well, she's looking for a job. She has an interview, and hopefully she's going to get it. She wants to do that, and she'll talk about it later, I'm sure. Right, Amy?
Maybe. Depends on how it works out.
Yeah, it works out. That's right.
Yeah, if it doesn't work out well, then no, I might not talk. I will never talk about it, and I'll just be depressed for, very long period of time.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I have confidence. What is the use to the immune system of circulating antibodies to nucleocapsid when the protein shouldn't circulate outside of the cell? Amy?
Well, there are antibodies that work intracellularly that target that for like add-in for rhino that target the viral proteins in addition to cell proteins. Just because you take the polypeptide and you chop it up, the immune system doesn't really know where the protein is. It just makes antibodies, right? So to suggest that, it's a thinking process is not really correct.
Also, I thought you would say that it's some antibodies can get into cells and do their job there.
Yeah, I did say that.
Oh, you did?
Say that. That's
okay.
That's the TRIM21 and the adenovirus against rhino and adenovirus that not only bind the virus particle, but they bind TRIM21.
Thank you, Srini, for your contribution. Appreciate it. And Tony says, no proof doesn't mean we can't make intelligent guesses. I'm all for intelligent guesses, but when you say that I'm wrong, that I have a problem with, especially when you have no backup for it. So you could say, well, I think it's this way. That's fine. But,
they should start off with, this is my hypothesis.
Yeah, just say, this is my hypothesis. Not, Vinny, you're wrong, or Amy, you're wrong.
I think we should just start off with, this is my hypothesis.
Does the flu vaccine act like COVID in that it doesn't prevent infection, but it prevents severe illness? Yeah, and in fact, Amy has said last week, if we were testing everybody for flu, we'd be going crazy. Oh my gosh, there's so many flu infections, right?
Yep.
It
Okay.
doesn't matter. Kate says, if I get sick, I'll wait 5 days after symptom-free, probably do antigen tests for my 99-year-old. I have no problem with that. I have a problem with hundreds and hundreds of young, healthy university kids being tested on a regular basis. And Amy feels the same way, I think.
Well, my undergrad feels the same way too. He's not so happy. This is great. So somebody says, why can't Amy have a desk or a hotline at the CDC so that they can check in with her before they put their foot in their mouth? Like,
You should, because Amy wants to do her own thing, right? Amy
seriously,
wants to do her own
and
thing.
what am I going to have? The red phone from, and pick it, and it be a direct line from the CDC to my phone, and like, with the nuclear option, when we were having the Cold War, wasn't there the red phone that he could just pick up and like launch bombs? Or that was a talk between him and Moscow or something. Wasn't there something like that?
I think you should be consulted more, but you want to do your own thing, and I understand that. Many
I
people I
don't.
know are triple vaccinated and positive. Some have symptoms while their spouses do not. Yes, that's the point. Um, my spouse is COVID positive, and she has no symptoms. I didn't test. I have no symptoms. I wear a mask.
But you don't wear a mask at home.
Oh, here I'm not wearing a mask. No.
And even when she was positive, you still didn't wear a
There's no
mask.
one at risk in this household. But
Exactly.
if I had a 99-year-old person here, I would probably wear a mask. Yeah.
I don't know. He's 93.
Who?
The loon.
Your father. Okay. Well, you have a different approach, right? It's
Yeah,
fine.
it's fine.
Amy, you've said in the past the pandemic has a couple more years to run. What do you make of WHO stating it can end this year?
Get out the big button calculator and recalculate.
How can they get vaccine? Much of Africa doesn't have
So,
vaccine. Seriously?
so the prediction is that there will not be enough vaccine or even antiviral until the end of 2023. And that's if everything goes according to plan, and nothing has gone according to plan. So I think that they need to recalculate. But, I don't have a platform. I don't have a publicist. I don't have a platform. Nobody cares what I think. There was one person who wondered how I got 5 years for the flu pandemic in 1918, and all you have to do is read John Barry's book. It tells you that it was 5 years.
The histrionics and misinformation will abate as we get closer to the election. I guess it's got to be a joke, right?
It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse, of course.
Yeah, because this is a way to change, is a way to tip it so that you get the opposite political party in power, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to look that hard. I mean, he has, yeah, you don't have, this is not rocket science.
Can you do a fact check to the Robert Malone interview on Joe Rogan?
No.
I can't. No. I don't. You want me to do content? I spend a lot of time doing content of my own, which is correct. I can't fact check other people's. I'm sorry. Why does he
Not
have this
only
guy
that,
on? Why does he have him on? He should have me on, right?
because the guy is this, he's pushing an agenda, and his agenda fits what Rogan's motto is. So,
I read about a study that says saline in the nose can stop replication. Is that BS?
for sure.
For sure. How can I give you money? Jerry, we love you. Well, you
How
can
can
just
you give us money? You go to PayPal or Patreon or microbe.tv and you click the donate button. It's
yes,
big. It's yellow.
microbe.tv/contribute. That's the best way. And their PayPal, Patreon, you can do it that way. Thank you so much. We'd appreciate it. How can I get one of Amy's 8-layer honey cakes? He's in Montreal. You want to send him one? I think Amy could make a fortune baking desserts. She's so bloody good at it. Today she gave me pfeffernuss.
Which I can never remember what they're called. I just call them the for something.
Pfeffernuss. Well, and
Creme brulee.
creme
Yeah,
brulee. She makes a killer creme brulee. And then what are those
we made meringues
meringues? What are they
with
called? Do you know?
almond. They're called meringues or snowballs. They're
Oh my
meringue
gosh.
cookies with almond flavor that I
Okay,
dyed purple.
Robert Malone embodies the role of credentialed crank, self-styled maverick, contrarian of uncertain intent. Tom, that is just beautiful. I love it. I'm going to save those words to describe other people. And thank you, Steph. Here's the link for contributing. Thank you so much. Do you think children under 5 are protected against symptomatic with just 2 doses? Well, 3 weeks apart. No, not at
Right,
all.
that's what we did initially.
Yeah, and that's what the kids are going to get because they're trialed that way. But I think they should get them spaced out. Yeah.
Well, they should, and yeah, there's some other problems.
Double vaxxed in March and April, tested positive, only mild symptoms. Should I get a booster? I don't think you need a booster if you've been infected. Do you, Amy?
No.
Would J&J or Moderna be better right now against Omicron due to the T cells, or are they equal? I
They're
think
equal.
two J&Js, not just one J&J, right? A second, 2 months or more out, yes. Neil, thank you for your support. Is the UK's approach a win or a fail? You mean testing like crazy? I don't see that it's going to make a difference, right?
No.
Thank you, Lisa, for your support. And I guess, yeah, viruses is over. Virology Live is over, but
There'll be a new course
there'll be
in
a
the
new one.
fall.
Yeah, there'll be a new one in the fall. Does Omicron really cause milder symptoms, or, as you say, the data are suspect? What do you think, Amy?
I think the data are suspect.
Yeah, I mean, South Africa has admitted that the reduction, the lower severity, maybe because so many people were vaccinated, all right? Which is what you expect in a vaccinated population. The disease is going to be less severe with any variant, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not a SARS-CoV-2 phenomenon. It's just basic immunology.
Thank you for your contribution. I think we just answered your question. Maybe that's the one I just clicked on and it just popped up again.
Yeah, I think so. Excuse me.
If we know the vaccines wane, why don't you think a 4th shot will be necessary? Well, Chris,
They're going to wane again.
The antibody levels contract, but you still have memory, and you still have memory T cells and B cells. And so that's why you don't need boosters. If you want to prevent infection, sure, boost every 6 months, but that's not the plan. That was never the plan. And as Paul often said on a recent TWiV, you're changing the game midstream, and that's not what the vaccines were designed to do.
Well, I want my car to become an airplane.
With Omicron raging, does it make sense to get a 3rd dose of Pfizer at 3 months?
No.
I just think you should wait. Wait for that 5 or 6 month dot, right, Amy?
Yeah, for sure.
Is there a function to allow immune memory to be written into DNA to possibly be passed down to generations? What a nice question. I like that.
There's germline.
Yes, but if you make a B cell, well, so your antibody genes are encoded in the germline. But if you make, say, a new B cell to an epitope, that's not going to be put into your germline.
No.
I'm sorry I'm keeping you up, Amy.
No, it's fine. No, it doesn't go into your germline.
Ooh, here's one for Amy. Strawson said Omicron is a different serotype. What do you think, Amy? I mean, it could be, right?
It could
be.
A different. It could be. I think you need to do a lot more. You need to do a lot more testing. It could be a different serotype, which would go into, which would just validate my philosophy that all of this when you get variants, you're just watching antigenic drift, right? Isn't that what I write now in my
Yes,
papers
that's
and
what you're working
grants?
on with your viruses. Yes.
Yeah, isn't that what I write now in my papers and grants? Antigenic drift.
I don't think we need an Omicron-specific vaccine. No, and it's interesting that it might be a different serotype, which for other viruses would require, like polio, 3 serotypes, 3 vaccines. But
But
I
you
don't.
would actually have to prove that if you took sera, so you would actually have to prove that if you took sera from an Omicron, it didn't protect
That's right. Disease.
against disease caused by other variants. You have to do it in both ways. So, like 50,000 monkeys were basically used to do this for polio.
That's
Because
a really good question, Amy. If you made an Omicron-specific vaccine, how do you know it would protect against other variants that may be minimal now but are still around? Right.
right, you have to test it out because it's not just a unidirectional thing. Like we when we, for our work, we characterize it in both directions. We
Yeah.
use virus A to neutralize virus B and virus B to neutralize virus A. So I don't see where this has occurred for Omicron. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it could be, but until you actually take monospecific polyclonal sera from animals that were just immunized with Delta, with Beta, with Gamma, with Alpha, with what is it, P whatever's circulating in Brazil, and then show that they cannot neutralize Omicron, and then you take those viruses and show that anti-Omicron serum cannot neutralize them. I'm on the fence about whether or not you're seeing a different serotype.
Okay. She got shingles and debilitating headaches 10 days after vaccine. They subsided 7 months later. Neurodoctor said B-cell depletion allowed headaches to subside. Is that right? Would a booster re-trigger the headaches?
I never heard that headaches were caused by B cells, but you should talk to Daniel.
Yeah,
Daniel's
we had a shingles question last week, and he said he's hearing of shingles induction by vaccination for sure. But the headache, not clear. Can ask Daniel, though, yeah.
Yeah, it's 10:03.
Okay, do you want to go? I'm going to go a little longer.
Well, how much longer are you gonna go? Because
You want to leave, right?
eventually I need to leave and do some work. How
I'll go.
much
I'm going to
longer?
go. I'll go to 10:30.
All right, fine. I stayed this long. I'll go to 10:30 with you, and then we'll call it a day.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, H. Sue, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. Yes, so many people, including scientists, are getting lost in this crazy time. They are getting lost. And I have to hand it to Amy to do this with me and help keep it steady, for sure. Ian, Happy New Year. I got a text from my bank. My credit card has been blocked due to too many fraudulent YouTube transactions. I have to call them. I've only given to TWiV. And yes, I know you've given a lot, Ian. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. So I hope you sort that out. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, J Mac, for
What kind
your
of business are you running here, Vincent? All these fraudulent things.
Should I send my 6-year-old son to school?
Yes.
Yes.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask so that he doesn't bring home to your daughter. Yes, because your daughter's not vaccinated. Yes. How are we sequencing too much, as Amy says? So if we don't know Omicron versus Delta numbers, I can find them nowhere except London, where Omicron is. What does it make if Delta versus Omicron in terms of treatment?
Doesn't.
That's Amy's point. If Omicron is much more fit in creating an infection, I would think a smaller viral load is needed. Ergo, it would be more transmissible. But you don't know any of that, do you? And smaller viral load, we just don't know. And this is
smaller viral load does not mean it's more transmissible.
No. It means you need less virus to start an infection.
Yeah, that's all.
Transmission is different. And these are the data that we want. Thank you, German opera singer. Really appreciate your contribution. And there are a lot of questions here, and we're not going to get to them all, but we do appreciate 1,200 people being here tonight.
Yeah, it's almost 13. It's large.
You won't see this comment till later, but loved Amy's look and gestures when virus going under doors silliness was mentioned by Vincent. Wait a minute. Amy's the only one who can say silliness about me.
I was going to say, I didn't say silliness.
But that was based on that
yeah, I know.
Hong Kong study where they said it went under the door. It wasn't silliness.
Yeah, I know.
It was
I
a
know
paper.
what it's, I know. And I just want to know if it's like the green goo that is in the 60s horror movies, when the guy was going, and you saw the green goo coming through the doors,
Yeah, got it.
I like neon green stuff, but
Is it possible to get COVID through the eyes?
Doesn't seem so.
Could Omicron use a different receptor? No, I don't. It uses ACE2. That's for sure. As you said on TWiV, we're scaring the wrong people. Zero COVID mindset. Can you close the door, please? Zero COVID mindset, I believe Amy called it. Yes, but that's what Daniel said also. We're scaring the wrong people.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul, for your contribution. Appreciate it. Omicron study 70 times. That's wrong. We talked about that.
No times zero.
Joe, thank you for your contribution. It's difficult for me to distinguish cold symptoms from my allergies, which might include a mild cough. I've vaccinated and boosted, but self-test with rapid antigen kits when in doubt. Okay.
I'm not clear what... So if it's just to know exactly what's causing the cough, that's fine, but it doesn't change how you're going to manage it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Unless you get hospitalized, in which case, yeah, testing matters in a hospital. I prefer to run with the heretics of science. That's why I tune into Q&A with A&V and the TWiV. We're the heretics of science. Yeah.
Just don't burn me at the stake like they did the witches.
Oh, look at Djokovic was refused entry into Australia because he's not vaccinated.
Yeah, I know.
What do you think about that, Amy?
So he applied for a medical exemption, and the tournament he applied to the medical exemption. So either the tournament or the prime minister then came out and said that he applied to the wrong people for a medical exemption. It's only given by these other people. So yeah, he has about 3 days to file it for an injunction. Otherwise, he has to leave. His visa will be revoked. And he came really close to the Grand Slam last year. So I'm sure he's pissed because he's,
Yeah. Okay. In rabies, vaccine trials with mRNA showed antibody response was transient and waned within 6 months. T-cell immunity was strong. Shouldn't we have expected this contraction with antibodies? All antibody levels contract, right?
Right.
It's a natural process, as we always say. So it should not have ever been a surprise that happens.
Right. I don't think it.
What do you think about booster effectiveness against infection reducing to 33% after 10 weeks? Well, I think that was one study, and I think it needs to be validated.
I don't care about infection.
But infection doesn't matter, yes. It's
I don't
severe
care
disease.
about infection.
And severe disease protection has not changed, right?
Right.
Thank you, DR, for your contribution. I see a fair number of people in the Bay Area riding bikes masked with no helmet. Who are they protecting? Yes, indeed. They should be wearing helmets, right?
Yeah, for sure.
When would you like to say you feel comfortable living again like you did pre-COVID? Thing like mass restaurant travel, etc. When will this not be a threat? I'm okay doing all of that, but I have to wear a mask at most of them now, right? Restaurants, theaters, mass transit. I do all of that. But here
No,
in New
you don't
York, you
wear a
have to be
mask in
masked.
the restaurant.
Yeah,
You
that's
just have
within the
to show your
restaurant.
mask,
You don't.
your vaccination card.
Yeah, that's fine. I have no problem eating in a restaurant without a mask.
Yeah, there
No,
was I was wondering, did you have one of those that had a cutout?
but I do still wear a mask. Like so walking around a mall, for example, I'll wear a mask.
You
I
go to the
think
mall?
the Italian mall we went to,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I wear a mask just kind of out of habit because then there's another place where I need to put it on, so I don't bother to take it off. I have to put it on in the train. As soon as I get off, I take it off. When will I be comfortable? I'm comfortable now. I'd be fine not wearing a mask anywhere. You think the U.S. will recommend a fourth dose? So Amy's on record saying May, right?
No, I'm on record saying that Israel will give out fifth doses in May. I'm on record. I will be very surprised if the US gets to 4 doses.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Is anyone studying long haul between vaccinated and unvaccinated? Yeah, Daniel is always talking about this. There are some large ongoing studies looking at that, but they're not done.
Well, how long is long? So is it just a year? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? How long is long?
No, I think a year would be good. No,
I don't know.
but
I'm not
that's what
sure.
I'm sorry. That's what Daniel is saying. He says they're ongoing, and I don't know. He'll tell us when they're done.
Yeah.
Can you compare the structures of the Omicron spike to the common cold coronas? Is it becoming more like a common cold by convergent evolution? That's a good question. I doubt that they are looking similar, right? I mean, they're
So,
all trimers, and they have differences in the structures, right? And
yeah.
common cold coronas bind different receptors, so that's going to be different as well. So at least one of
Although
them. Go ahead.
I thought one did bind ACE too.
Yeah, at least one binds ACE2. That's right. Yep. Okay. After this wave, I know COVID will continue to linger, but as you say, so many people you know have COVID. When do you think we will hit some equilibrium? I don't think we will be at a point where it's not transmitting because vaccinated people, well, not unvaccinated people will still be the majority or be a large fraction of the population. Now, how long will it take them to be infected and immune? That's the question, right? But I think we're going to have, it'll be like influenza. We're going to have outbreaks every winter, most likely. What do you think, Amy?
Uh, I don't know that, well, it'll be exactly like influenza because there's greater variation in influenza with reassortment and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
I think it'll be more like every 3 years there'll be an outbreak. And then there'll be pockets like I think it'll be more like measles where you vaccinate and then you'll have pockets of people who have large outbreaks because they were unvaccinated. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
But
think.
but the equilibrium is still at least a year away, I think.
Oh, I think it's two by minute.
Yeah.
I think it's a minimum of two.
Vanity. Hello, 36,000 feet east of Daytona Beach. Cool. Thanks for checking in. And Debs gets my joke. TWiV's origin was in a lab. You got it too, Amy, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Is there any way using science to substantiate the theory that COVID was spreading in October 2019 at the World Military Games? Can you substantiate that, Amy?
So I guess the only way you could do it is if you went and only looked at antibody level. You looked for antibodies against spike or actually nucleic capsid or some protein that didn't really undergo immune predominant selection. But I don't know how you're going to find those people and how you're going to verify that they have not been infected since 2019. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you had
It's
stored
hard.
serum from that time, do you think you could look for antibodies?
Yeah, I think people have done that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
And
think like that's what Trevor Bradford, whatever Trevor has done and other
yeah,
people have done, is that they've gone back to their serum collections. I mean, Jesse definitely did that to show that like you got that antigenic drift of 229E and HU43 and
yeah,
whatever is
yeah.
8 years, right? And he probably, I think in that paper, he says that he looked for antibodies against any other coronas and he couldn't find them.
Yeah, I think the only evidence that we have that it was circulating then are phylogenetic trees that, calculate a clock rate of evolution, and they say it could have been circulating then, but I'm not sure we're going to get better than that unless we have other samples, right?
Right.
Lisa says, I love the TWiV model of analyzing papers. That's what we do. We talk about papers, and that's part of the problem with the pandemic is that not a lot of good papers come out really quickly, and we have problems with the data. And so our time frame is longer than that of a pandemic.
Yes.
Vincent, in TWiV 1, you talked about pandemics, PCR, difference between infection and disease. You and Amy have to be time travelers. Wow. TWiV 1. Wow. Well, it's basic science. It is, as Amy would say, it's a basic principle that doesn't change. And I'm sorry I
Nope.
hit my desk and caused it to make noise. I know that you don't like that.
No, it's fine. I don't have a problem.
No, someone complained
Oh,
that I
I
was
mean,
making
I
too much
prefer,
noise.
I don't know. I think it's good to be passionate about topics. I think it's very important.
I've received 2 vaccine shots, and I don't want to get any more until 2023. Will this make me equal to someone who didn't get one? So the
No,
problem, Ian, is that you probably got them too close together. And so you're not as well protected as you could be further apart. But if you get infected, you'll probably have a mild disease, and that'll make up for the 3rd shot. What do you think of that philosophy, Amy?
sounds good.
People are binging on TWiV. Mark doesn't have any
Well,
questions.
that's great.
Mark, you often have a lot of questions. It's fine. Reverend says, you're fired up. In my earbuds, I hear his hand pounding his desk like an old-timey Puritan preacher. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was a little fired up before. And even
I
with
think it's
Amy here.
fine. I think it's fine. You should be passionate about something. Otherwise, we need to move on and find something else. No problem.
Do you think it is safe for people in clinical trials who contract COVID and recover to be administered a vaccine from the clinical trial? I don't understand that. Do you?
No, I was going to ask you what you meant.
I don't know what it means. I'm sorry. What exactly is the theory of waning virulence? Okay, so the theory is, I don't think it's a theory because there's no data for it.
Yeah, a theory doesn't need to be data. It's just an
Doesn't?
idea. A theory, yeah, a
But
theory
a
is
hypothesis has to have some data, right?
no, you can base your idea. Hypothesis, theory, and idea are all synonyms of each
Oh,
other.
okay. Well, I've been thinking about it wrong. Anyway, the idea is that viruses should become less. So when a virus first spills into people from an animal reservoir, it's virulent because it's not well adapted to the host. Then over time, it becomes less
No,
virulent because
it's wait. When a virus goes into an animal, it's virulent not because it's not well adapted to the host. It's because the host has no immunity against it.
well, that too, but it also hasn't had millions of years to adapt and become less virulent, which we think is the trajectory because a host who survives longer is more likely to transmit. That's the idea. But we know that very sick people, smallpox makes you very sick and it transmits very well. So I'm not sure of the wisdom of that idea. Okay. Okay, Amy, is that good?
Yeah, I was thinking. I was thinking of something else.
And so Tom says the rabbit example was an extremely virulent virus in one host. Yes, isn't it still it is a severe disease. It kills about 30% of rabbits, but there have certainly been changes in the virus and the rabbits to moderate disease. So, it's a trend consistent with this idea. Could this virus mutate into something like herpes that stays active over a lifetime, flaring up from time to time? No, this is not that kind of virus. I don't think it would change to become a persistent infection. Right, Amy?
Right.
So this person, here's Daniel, who now is enrolling in this NOPV13.
Yeah, that's what I told you earlier.
I would receive 1 or 2 doses of either novel. Any advice? No, you'll be immunized. You're going to be fine. They're going to just collect your feces and look for virus, right, Amy?
Yeah, I don't we did the paper for Raoul over, but I don't remember what it was.
Have you heard of Flurona? This is a press manufactured thing. There have been like 2 cases of people that have been doubly infected with influenza virus and coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, which you would expect in a winter when both viruses are circulating, right? So they're calling it Flurona. Come on. Now, it's very possible that either disease is slightly changed, right, Amy, by having both viruses in the same host.
Sure.
Right? But it's not a new thing. All right, Patty Pink, a 22-year-old, double vaccinated, immune compromised, and exposed, tested Monday, was told she was barely positive because it was the lightest color she had seen. So on a lateral flow assay, which are those little cartridges that you...
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking that I've never heard that color indicated positivity.
I mean, you get a line and you're positive, but the intensity of the line is not really related. It's not quantitative. It's not related to how positive you are.
Right, exactly.
It's not. It's like you're pregnant or not, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. So, in that case, you would go and get another pregnancy test.
I've got COVID. Should I get a chest x-ray? If you feel fine, no. If you can't breathe, then go get medical care for sure. Ooh, look at this one. In New Zealand, a farmer went to Australia, smuggled into New Zealand a sample of myxoma. It killed 100 thousands of rabbits initially, but bounced back. Yeah. Rabbits are profligate, right?
Yeah.
Since you have well over 1,000 people today, you're famous. Can you do a shout out? Can you thank my wife for pointing me to your weekly show and helping me reduce COVID anxiety? So, Mrs. Theodore P., thank you for pointing Theodore to this show and helping reduce his COVID anxiety. That's cool.
It's great.
Right, Amy?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I love the product placement shot. Someone said I should, when I drink my water, which is in here, I should show TWiV, so I do.
I think it's great.
It's not like I make tons of money from selling these mugs. Not at all.
Is it about selling the mug or having the person tune in to TWiV on Friday?
No, it is not about selling. It's about people having mugs and other people seeing them and going and listening, because I do want people to get the information, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Amy, stay up late. I'll call HR.
It's not an HR problem.
Maybe we could look at lung tissue damage to determine if a variant is less virulent. Well, you're going to get the lung tissue mainly from people who died, right? So you're biasing it right away. It's not a controlled infection. You can't do it in people. Right, Amy?
No, I like my lungs inside. They work better there.
Thanks, Joseph, for your contribution. Thank you, Justin, for your contribution. Let me start going through the super chats now because we have to wrap up in 5. Amy has to walk home. We want her to be safe in Upper Manhattan. Thank you, Lynn, for your contribution. I'm sorry that you can't maintain a positive attitude. Amy and I do, and we hope we can spread it to you, because I think it's going to be better. Not a problem.
For sure. For sure.
Oh, so many great comments. I wish I could go through all of them, but I don't want to keep my faithful moderators up any longer. Thank you, Doreen, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. You can contribute here on YouTube if you'd like. Thanks, Kent, for your contribution. And if you didn't get your question answered today, you can come back next Wednesday, right, Amy? You'll be here.
Yeah, I'm always here.
Thank you, guys, for your contribution. I was PCR positive December 1. Yesterday I felt great. Do you think I made a full response to other targets, or was it blunted?
I think you're fine.
You made a full response. Absolutely. No reason it would be blunted. Thanks, Westfield 90. So much unnecessary panic and stress is caused by poor messaging. That's true. We are here, and you guys have the advantage of hearing it from us. So we don't want to lead anything except this, right, Amy?
Lead? What?
Lead. Amy
wants
to lead her lab, and
I was going to say.
Want to lead our educational efforts. Thank you, Michael. How can I get the cake? Well, you'll have to ask Amy. If she's pretty busy. I'm not sure she can send you a cake, because then she'll have to send it to everyone, right, Amy?
Yeah, I'm not making cakes right now. I'm writing grants and working on talks. And
thanks, Andrea, for your contribution. I'm not making cakes. I'm writing grants. That's great. I love it.
That's true. I'm writing grants. Yeah.
Thank you, Shiloh. Thank you so much for your support of the Incubator in Science Education. Thank you, W. Fenwick.
It's cute.
In Ontario, when the squeeze dose 2 to close to 1, by what means would the impairment to efficacy occur? It didn't allow the antibody response to mature and become broader so you could deal with more variants. And it was actually the Ontario study that showed you needed to give a third dose at 6 months, and that fixed the whole thing. Absolutely. And that convinced me to get the third dose. And I worked on Amy, and she said, okay, we'll go tomorrow. And then Columbia said, you need a third dose to get in the building. Thank you, Rushby. ICU nurse. Tough times, I know. Keep with it. You'll be good. And it must be very hard to be ICU people these days. Let's see. Boy, so many comments, Amy. So many comments. It's amazing. Thank you, T, for your contribution toward an Uber so Amy gets home safely. Isn't that sweet, Amy?
That's very nice, but we don't need an Uber.
How many Uber. Blocks away are you?
9, but no Uber.
Thank you, Becky, for your contribution. And thank you, Joseph. What's up?
It's cute.
Very cute. It was also my birthday last week, right, Amy?
It was.
It was my birthday Sunday. Happy birthday to me. Thank you, Kathleen, for your contribution. I am in my last year of the 60s. Can you believe it? Do I look 69?
No, you don't.
Thank you. You're being kind.
You should stop focusing on it. It's totally ridiculous.
Doreen, thank you. I think that's your second contribution. That's really very nice. Patricia, thank you. I'm glad you like it. We try and tell you the science here. Thank you, Keith. The different variants must be the same size and shape. Besides viral production, what else would affect transmissibility or fitness, I would say? Immune evasion, kinetics of virus production, the stability of viruses in droplets. Can you think of anything else, Amy?
Antagonism of innate immunity.
Antagonism of innate immunity, yeah. Thank you, Susan, for your contribution. Why are most of the deaths still in the elderly but vaccinated and mostly? It was because the protection against death and severe diseases in the 90s, it's not 100%, and those are the ones that are at risk.
And actually, death is not still mostly in the elderly. Actually, there was a breakdown of it either in the Journal or the Times, and it's moved away from the elderly. It's mostly in people under 60 and between like 18 and 60 because we think we're too macho, basically.
And before we leave, there are 1,100 of you and 725 likes, thumbs up. Let's see if we could get that over 800. Try that. just click the like button. Thank you, Brian, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. And we are reaching the bottom here. So many great, and you can go back and look at some of these questions. They're instructive on their own. Thank you, Mario, for your, yeah, you got more cab fare, Amy. You can go back and forth a few times.
I don't need cab fare, but thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for your birthday wishes. Appreciate it. Happy New Year to everybody. And
It's all good.
bring your questions back next week. And all of you stay safe. And look at Amy stayed with us for 2.5 hours. Thank you so much, Amy. Smash the like button.
Good.
Come on, get us over 800
great.
while I say goodbye to you. I appreciate you staying, Amy. And I guess Amy stayed because you don't have an experiment to do. You're going to go home now, right?
Yeah, I didn't have an experiment to do.
All right. Well, thanks
I'm
for
gonna
staying.
go home and work and edit my email so it's more grammatically correct and logically flowing, not just diarrhea on the page. No, diarrhea on the page isn't so good.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your contributions. Thanks to the moderators. And thank you, Amy. Be safe, everyone.
My pleasure. It was good.
See you next time. Good night.
All right. Good night.